Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 7 of the Nobody Entertainment Podcast. This is the podcast where we discuss our lives, video games, music, movies, and so on and so forth. But today we have a couple of different changes that we're going to be experiencing. Number one, according to John, this is going to be our first ever Squawk Squad, where we just get on here and we just talk about one specific topic. We're not going to do our normal breakdown of our lives, etc., etc. But with me, as usual, is Nobody John Ockert. I am Nobody James Black, and with us for the first time is our honorary guest, Nobody Stephen Holland. He might choose to join us in the future, but just to give a little bit of a backstory, Stephen Holland is one of our oldest friends, going all the way back to at least sixth grade for me. John didn't meet him until what, like last year?
Yeah, he's 89 or something. He's the oldest.
He is 89 years old. He is only coming to us through audio because
Pretty sure John's the oldest one out of all of us.
he is the oldest. You are correct about that. So that person that you hear squatting in the background is definitely Steven. So Steven, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell a little bit about yourself.
A little bitty bit.
I leaned into it because I fucked it up the first time.
Just like you said, I'm Steven. I've known you guys for forever, it seems like now. Probably two of my oldest friends besides a couple other people. Felt like when you guys started the podcast, it was something that was super interesting, something to keep us together as a way to kind of just do the same daily conversations that we were having when we all lived in the same house. Because James and I used to be roommates for, from like 05 to right up about till the time you got married, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then
ever since.
Oh yeah, I mean,
we had to break up so my love could carry on.
Yeah.
John moved in at one point into my house, so I've been roommates with him, and he got married too. So maybe that'll happen for me someday.
Steven's calling.
Yep, that's how it goes. As the dominoes fall, the marriages line up. So I'm sure you're batting the women away, but we're super glad to have you here, Stephen. Like I said, we're doing something a little bit different. We're not going to go into our necessarily just our lives and things specifically. But like I said, episode number 7 of the Nobody Entertainment Podcast, episode number 1 of the Squawk Squad, we're going to be discussing specifically the next gen video game consoles, or just video game consoles in general. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to give just a little bit of a backstory on my experience with video game consoles, and then I'm going to turn it over to John, and he can talk about how one console he's owned in his entire life, and then I'll turn it over to Steven. The good thing about this dynamic that we're going to have here is I am pretty much video game console troop member number 1. John is video game PC member number 1, and I think Steven rides that line pretty well evenly. I think he has a tendency to kind of go a little bit of both ways, if you know what I'm saying.
Heyo.
But myself personally, I remember all the way back to the NES whenever I was legitimately, and I'm not making this up, 3 years old. I think one of the earliest memories I have is sitting in my dining room where we had our old tube television with an NES hooked up to it, playing DuckTales or playing Mega Man 2 with my father. That was probably the first video game I ever beat. And I think along the way, I've owned literally every single other major console all the way up to the PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch. But I didn't own things like the Jaguar, the Saturn, or any of the kind of the failed consoles. But I did own a Dreamcast. I did own a Wii U, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a little bit of my backstory, because the reason I bring that up is I am generally curious to if you guys have followed suit. John, what's like your first console? What have you owned through the years? Because I've owned PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One. I did not buy the Xbox One X. I've owned every Nintendo iteration with the exception of the Virtual Boy. That's like the only Nintendo console I did not own. So John, where are you at?
Well, I wasn't a very lonely child growing up with 3 other siblings, and I always was able to make friends, so I didn't have to own every console. Well, there's how we got,
You're an insult, but I'll take it.
Well, we weren't very well off when we were growing up, so like I got
they
my
were feeding
experience from
3 other giants.
What?
I said they were feeding 3 other giants.
That's
and they
true.
just
He
start
is the
eating
run
and
to
eating.
the liver.
I
That's for
ended up
sure.
no. So like my first experience with an actual console, I want to say is with the Atari. I had some older friends that were playing it on a black and white television. And I was like, this is cool. It had like tanks and some other things. And then I played my first. We got our first PC, which was an old IBM that had orange and black, and we played some crazy cool Ace Pilot game on there, original Donkey Kong. Um, but like I think the first time that I ever was like, wow, this is pretty cool, was playing 3D Runner on the Nintendo. And I was like, I gotta get one of these, and they were out for a little bit, but I had to like mow lawns, pick up walnuts, and shovel snow. And I saved up, and we got our own Nintendo, and we had Mario, 3D Runner. I mean, it was the coolest thing. But yeah, at some point it was like, hey, PC gaming is pretty something that I really like to do. Um, but I've had the Super Nintendo, the regular NES, Xbox, or not Xbox, but PlayStation X, and then I I got out of my car, and that
Which
fell
is a
into some.
PlayStation 1.
No, it's the PlayStation X, and when I got out of my
Okay.
car, it fell into some mud. So then I had to buy a PlayStation One, which is the little white one, which is a little bit more portable, and hopefully is mud resistant. I don't know. I don't have it anymore. But then I had like PSP, PS Vita, PlayStation 3, and that's where I stopped buying consoles was after the Vita. Felt kind of burned by Sony with that one, but they didn't really have the mustard. The games weren't very, I don't know. They didn't appeal to me, and then the quality of the graphics of the next generation after the PlayStation 3 didn't really appeal to me either. But like my brother, he had Xboxes, so I didn't have to buy one, I had friends with 64 and the GameCube. Eric, my younger brother, had a GameCube, so I didn't have to buy that either. It was like, oh, cool, yeah, all right.
I do like that just in this recording, we were already making fun of you for being the oldest of us. And then we like, look, tell us about your console history. And you're like, well, I started out with the Atari, which is like a 1970s console. I definitely
I
had
wasn't
an
even
Atari, but it
alive when
was
that
more.
came out, but I played that shit.
Sure, it was definitely a novelty for me. One of the video games I used to play on. I think I had like a 5 or 6 cartridges, and it was I looked it up. It's Eggomania, where you literally were like a bear with a hat on his head, and there's a chicken at the top that would lay eggs, and you would just scroll. You're literally with the dial going left to right to catch the eggs. I actually had a good time. We also had tanks, we had Pong, all the basics on the Atari. But I did have an Atari. It was a lot of fun. But um, with that being said, let's turn it over to Steven. Give us just a little bit of a backstory on your experience with consoles. Where did you start out? What have you had?
So I would say, just like everyone starts off with pretty much the Nintendo. I was pretty young when it came out. Played it, played the Sega. My parents bought those, and they were the avid gamers at that point. And then moving on into the later stages of the consoles, I didn't necessarily keep up with all of them. I'm almost positive, like one Christmas, I asked for the PlayStation, the PS1, and got a Super Nintendo. So that's kind of the idea of like how far behind I was. Um, but I did get the PS1 eventually, the PS2, the PS3 we all got, which was a really fun story to tell. I got the PS4. I didn't get it at launch like we
Since
did
you're
with the
since you're
PS3.
there, you got to the PS3. But give a little bit of a backstory on that. What did we end up doing for the PS3? How did that thing roll out? Because I do think that was at least a fun experience. We'll see if it's a fun
So
story.
you have to fill in the blanks if I miss something out. So part of it was just you and I. We wanted to get the PS3, and we wanted to do realistically what we wanted to do was just flip them, and that was the idea. It was like we're gonna flip them, and then we're gonna go buy PS3s like 2 months later when they're not as rare anymore.
Right. The idea, because they were released at launch for four ninety nine and $5.99, which was unprecedented. So we were going to pick them up and we were going to sell them on eBay with the intention of turning a profit because we were bad people. Um, so
I don't know if you'd call it a bad person. I think it's just called capitalism.
yeah,
So
I guess you're right. We were trying to profit on the off the backs of the needy that couldn't get their hands on it. So what did we end up doing?
So originally we were just, we were kind of like, well, there's no one at Best Buy, so we've got some time. And then we were like, it's so cold outside. Let's just go see if we can do it at Walmart. And Walmart already had like 20 people lined up. And we were like, oh crap, we got to go back to Best Buy. And I remember I think we were trying to go see a movie. like we were gonna go see a movie, and then it was like, oh crap, there's already like 3 people, 5 people lined up, and we were like, let's screw off this movie, let's go line up, and we actually lined up like what was it, 3 days or 3 nights prior to the actual release date,
It was 3 days.
3 days and 2 nights, because
Yeah, we were there for 3 days, 2 nights, and I don't remember what we went and saw. I remember the movie part now that you mentioned it. I didn't necessarily remember that thing, but this thing came out November of 2006, so it was relatively cold. It wasn't too bad, and we lined up, and we ended up having, I believe, some friends and my girlfriend at the time. My girlfriend at the time is now my wife, but bring us some supplies. I think we ended up getting. Did
She
we got
wrecked
our
her
own
car.
tent?
She wrecked her car too.
She wrecked. No, she got pulled over because she didn't use her signal right outside the Best Buy parking lot, and that's why it had happened there. Because she was the situation. Yet we ended up camping out 2 nights, 3 days altogether outside of the Best Buy, and it was, in my experience, one of the coolest gaming memories that I have
oh,
because
100%, 100%.
we had just the coolest group of people. What was your number, John? I'm sure you remember.
It was
I
like
thought we were
23 or 22.
no,
No,
we were
we
like
were
6,
way
7,
up.
and 8. We were
Yeah,
we were we were really really early.
we were, and the coolest thing about it was we didn't learn anybody's names, so we
Yeah, it
were
was just their
Numbers
identifying
number.
only.
by numbers. So it was,
Hey,
you know, it
John,
was
get
like,
over here.
yeah, hey, four, can you watch my spot? I got to use the restroom. It was the what made the experience. It was it was the coolest group of people, and we didn't know any of them, and we were lined up outside this Best Buy. We were camping out, and they had all kinds of demos and everything set up inside the Best Buy. They had a Guitar Hero set up, so we were going in and playing Guitar Hero. I went home and showered. I think 2 of the days that we were camping out, I just said, "Hey, four, watch my spot," or you guys just kept eyes on it.
Yeah, I
And
had to work one day, so I paid like a 12-year-old that was out there with his buddy like $20 to hold my spot while I went to work.
which is which is just, it just speaks volumes about the video game culture and the community, because if you go to the online, community, all you see is toxicity, hatred, and aggravation. But
Very
at the end of
negative
the
stuff
day,
now.
yeah, everybody, but even now I think that the majority, because that's the verbal minority, the silent majority I think is still very involved and accepting.
I don't know. It got kind of violent that one night when that XB rolled out and everybody got out of it. And they had that banner they rolled out that was like for the
Oh, the
Wii or
Wii U
whatever.
or the what was it? Just I guess it was just the Wii.
Just a
The
Wii,
guy,
yeah. We
yeah, it
ran
was
up
just
the
the Wii at the
hill and we
time. There
all
was
like charged him
there
and
was a
they,
bunch. It was like some frat kids or something,
yeah.
and they were like, "PlayStation sucks. The Wii rules or something," because it was supposed to come out like 2 months later or a month later.
No, it was days later. The
Was it
PlayStation came
days?
out, yeah, literally days. The PlayStation came out November. The PlayStation 3 came out November 17th, and the Wii launch date was November, literally the next day.
Ah, okay. I do
So,
remember. I do remember we all like so the Best Buy parking lot is like a partial hill, and like half of us, because at this point there was like 30 people in line, because
Oh yeah.
the Best Buy was getting 7 of the bigger PlayStations and like 20 of the smaller ones, and but anyways, like half of us just started running up the parking lot hill, and we weren't actually going to do anything. It was just more that the whole fun part of it, and they all sped off in their little
With
truck
their
and everything. But there
banner.
was like 5 or 6 of them. It was pretty
so
hilarious.
But for the one story we have there, we had people pulling up with Xboxes
Oh
and
yeah.
projectors, and we were playing Halo off the side of the Best Buy building. We had people with like, warehouse like turbine heaters set up so we could all stay warm. And again, just the fact that people would watch our place in line, um, just to run home or go get something to eat or just go inside, warm up, and play some video games. It was just an amazing experience, and it was way better than what we expected to turn. I mean, at most, we were hoping to sell this game console for what, maybe $1,200, so we are going to make a $600 profit.
Yeah.
But John, what ended up happening with those consoles? What did we do?
Well, when you got something sitting there, you know, a box, an unopened box, what are you supposed to do?
Well, they're
Well,
on eBay at this time too.
yeah, they're on eBay for sure. I had Kinzer put mine on eBay. I was like, I'll give you a cut. You put it on eBay, work the eBay store. I don't want to deal with any of that. I don't know who was the first one to open there. I think it was you, James.
Oh,
Well,
100%.
I
100%.
100%,
decided
100% it was him.
here's
He opened
sure.
it, and then he was like, guys, we got to play this game. You got to open it up. It's so cool. And I was like, you opened yours?
Yeah.
So whenever we bought the console, from what I can remember, we bought the console and one video game. And to my knowledge, we bought Resistance. Now, I think I might have bought MotorStorm, but I know for a fact
I
I
think
had
we all
gotten.
bought Motorstorm. I don't
So
think
we might
I
have
just don't
gotten
think any of us played it.
I dabbled, but it was very, very short lived. I think they had like three tracks. But either way, so we ended up getting home, and our goal was to put this on eBay. But as soon as we logged into eBay, we quickly realized that there was just thousands upon thousands of receipts on eBay. So it was just pre-purchases that had already sold for the price point that we were looking for originally. So ultimately, we decided, okay, we can turn a little bit of a profit, but if we spent 3 days, we probably want to keep something to show our uh, efforts, right? We want a little bit of a trophy. So at least myself, I tore this thing open and I actually went and bought an HD TV, which was nothing fancy. It was just a nice flat screen HD TV. And I remember popping Resistance in. And as soon as I got into it, because
You say
John's a bit
you
going,
say it so nonchalantly. An HD TV at that time was still like $1,200 for a 32-inch.
Yeah,
I
I literally went to Best Buy. I bought a Westinghouse 22-inch monitor that had the component D's. So I had the yellow, the green, and the blue. I
that's
spent
where I was.
$270 on that so I could play in 1080i on Resistance because I was playing on my television. It was 480i, and I was like, this isn't gonna work.
It's all coming back because okay, so the thing was mine was it was only a 720p flat screen HD TV, but it was still a tube television. And I remember I spent $600. It was nothing too extravagant. And I remember specifically the first night we all got together because I ended up talking you guys into keeping your consoles. And Steven, you ended up because my brother's the one that was buying the console. You ended up
Yeah, so yeah, he put the money up and I put the
the
labor
time, yeah.
into it
So you ended up buying the console from my brother, and
for
we all
$200 more than we actually paid for it at Best Buy. It was
so
so fucked
so
up.
my brother flipped it and actually made some money off of it,
It
whereas
didn't
the
do
rest of
anything.
us
All he had to do was show up an hour before they unlocked the doors and swiped his credit card.
that was fun. So yeah, it was pretty shifty on his part, but I remember because we ended up getting together the first night. It was actually at my mother's house, who I was staying with at the time, and I had a little subwoofer for a surround sound system. And I specifically remember you, Steven, coming over with your TV, and you set it on that subwoofer, and we ended up getting together and landing up and playing Resistance multiplayer. And I don't think we were even online at the time. I think it was just the three of us screwing around. And my subs, the magnets inside the sub mess with your monitor so much that whenever you moved it, it left some kind of
Yeah, the bottom line.
imperfection, yeah,
Yeah.
on the screen. And I told you, I was like, hey, that's, I should have thought about that. I'm the one that told you to put your TV there. So I told you, I was like, I'll just buy you a new TV. I'm so sorry. Like, I felt so bad. I was like, I think I fucked your TV up. I didn't mean to do that. But anyway, that all together, that was kind of a failed mission, but it turned into an amazing experience. To obviously, it kind of is that situation solidified me as a PS fanboy. I guess I would say I'm kind of console agnostic because I've owned every one of the consoles. I'm still a huge Nintendo fan. I'm a huge PlayStation fan. The one that lags behind is Xbox for me, just because they don't keep me as involved. But I know we went off on a huge tangent. But where do you fall right now, Steven? Do you still dabble in the console market, or are you exclusively
Yeah.
PC?
No. So I think a lot of it comes down to the game, and realistically, a lot of it comes back down to how old the system is becoming. Because you get a system like, or you get a game, um, like the new Last of Us. It runs amazing on the PS4, but something like, say, the Cyberpunk that's coming out, I think it's probably going to be releasing before the PS5. And even though with the PS4, if you buy the PS4, they're going to give you a free upgrade to the PS5, which is pretty crazy. But I think it's going to run better on my computer, even if I'm still going to play with it, like say a controller or not. So it's kind of that difficult. Like you gotta weigh your options because Fallout has always ran better on a computer because of the load times. Because they are when you go into a building and you start looting stuff and you like throw all your junk into a locker so you can come back and get it on a PS4 or even the PS3 back then, it took so long for, like, it's like, oh, we're gonna go back into this building now, we got to pull that memory file of 800 pounds of guns that you just threw into a locker. And on the PC, it was always so much better.
For sure. And this is a tough question. And I'm gonna try to give you guys a little bit of time to think about it. I'm gonna ask you this question in just a second. What is your favorite gaming console of all time? So I'm John. PC is not the answer.
Yeah,
I'm
you said
asking you,
console. I heard. I heard.
what is your favorite gaming console of all time? Okay. I've been kind of racking my brain on this because I came up with this question. It's a very simple, obvious question, but I just wanted to put it out there to you guys to kind of see where you guys fall. And I've been rolling it around in my head because I could go, I think, confidently four different ways. And it's going to be either the original NES, it's going to be the Nintendo Switch, it's going to be the PlayStation 3 or the PlayStation 4. I think the most mileage I've gotten out of any of the gaming consoles is definitely going to be the PlayStation 4. But if I look at just my gaming roots, I think I got to go with the NES. So with that being said, I think I can successfully nix the PS3, although the foundation, the exclusive, the experience, because I think community driven, the PS3 is where I had the most fun and I spent the most time. I met the coolest online friends. We had a blast playing games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, Warhawk. Um, I don't. What was the other? There were three specific games. Oh, Resistance. I don't know why I was blanking on that, but we spent so much time playing those games that it solidified itself as such an amazing experience for me. But I am going to lock it in at the PlayStation 4, and I know that's possibly recency bias, but there are so many amazing exclusives that I just have attached myself to. And I think if I were to look back over the last 7 or so years, um, I think and kind of extract the video gaming side of it from the PlayStation, like remove the PlayStation exclusively, I think there would be a large gaping hole that would be really tough to fill. Whereas with my original, idea of the NES, I think I probably would have been young, malleable enough to be able to fill that hole with something else, if that makes any sense. Um, I've kind of necessitated myself to being a video gamer, and I love it. So I'm going to go with the PlayStation 4 as my favorite console of all time. I'm going to go round robin. We're going to turn it over to Steven now. What would you think is your favorite video game
Well,
console? I know John needs more time to think, so I'm going to go with
I
Steven.
got it. It's done.
so my question for yours first is, what on the PS4 made you come to that conclusion?
It's exclusively and redundancy the exclusives. I think the thing that
But
locks
which
me in.
exclusives though? This is
Oh,
my question.
absolutely. I'm gonna go with most recently Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us Part Two. Um, I'm gonna jump back. It's not necessarily an exclusive. It was a re-release, but it was The Last of Us because I think it really hit home and drove itself into the annals of video gaming as one of the best video games of all time. It's easily, and I think this will come up later in my life or in our podcast. Last of Us is just one of the most influential video games in itself. Um, Bloodborne is easily one of my top five favorite games of absolute all time. Even some of the video games that aren't necessarily my wheelhouse, although they are similar to things like Bloodborne. You have Neo and Neo Two. I mean, there's 140, I think it is. Place a Persona 5. I mean, the list just is Uncharted 4, Uncharted Lost Legacy, I think is what it's called. The Uncharted Collection, which is just the 1, 2, and 3 from the PlayStation 3. I think there was like 150 some odd different exclusive experiences that you could only find on the PlayStation. Spider-Man. I mean, again, the list just goes on. And for every time I locked myself into one of those, I completely lost myself in it. God of War, I didn't even mention God of War. Literally, another one of my. I could compose a top five of my favorite games of all times from the PlayStation 4 alone and not skip a beat. Again, Bloodborne, God
Yeah.
of War, Spider-Man, Last of Us
Was it
Part.
wasn't Bloodborne on the PS3?
No, it wasn't. It was exclusive to the PlayStation 4.
What am I thinking about then?
I have no idea, but I am confident. But that was a game, for instance, that was a Dark Souls or a Souls Born. I mean, they literally coined the term because it was a Souls like, and then Bloodborne came out and it was changed into Souls Born, which this we've gone into this on one of our conversations, John, with Bloodborne being one of my favorite games of all time. It's I could talk about that game for 5 hours. It is amazing, and it's an experience. If you could fight your way through, it changes you in a way that makes you appreciate
A
just a
man,
different.
you go in as a boy.
Exactly. You go in as a boy and you come out a man, which I'm excited for one of you guys to experience that, because it's the kind of game that defeats you in the first 5 hours of play, but it builds you up so much in the next 35 hours. I mean, if you can get first through that first 5 grueling hours, I'm sorry. We'll move on. I could go on about this. But like I said, I could just attach myself to so many different games in that console. Um, yeah, NES is a close number two, though, I will say.
I think so. Kind of go. It's based on. It's some of it for me would have to do with the games that you play. So if you look at back to like even say the Genesis, freaking Road Rash was so good when you're 7 years old. And I actually thought I was the coolest kid on the block because you could change. So the name was always Player One, and what I would do is I would change Player to Slater, and because it only required like changing a few letters. And I thought I was so smart at 7, being that guy. But I was awful at the game. So even though I was knocking people off the bike, I couldn't get past like the third stage before whatever it was that I'd always get like arrested or something.
That
Uh,
Genesis needs a shout out because of Golden Axe, Sonic,
yep.
Echo. I enjoyed all that stuff. I mean, it
Did you
had.
ever play Herzog?
I know of. Oh, wait, that was if that's the game I'm thinking of, that
So you,
was.
you play like a little aircraft, and then you could change into a little human, but it was almost like a MOBA in a way. It was
That
so
sounds like
good.
Blaster Master, something along those lines.
But
Yeah,
I
very much is like Blaster Master. Yep.
but I think for me it would have to be the PS3 because what it does is it brings the online there.
I saw the sadness in John's eyes because he's like, "Shit, I was gonna say the
I'm,
PS."
I'm, I'm still gonna say it.
So you guys go
because
into it. You guys can tag
because
team this.
because of the Resistance. I mean, Resistance was a great game. The online, the memories that we had from it. I mean, hell, we played that game for like 3-4 months before we found out how the humans could run. I mean, like we were. I
We were
mean, we're
doing
probably
okay in the
still bad at
multiplayer
games.
still without running.
The thing is, the PS3 itself was what the 360 was for the majority of Americans. Like for us,
Without the
we
rendering.
learned. You're exactly right. I will say I had a PlayStation brick on me though, so I PlayStation 3 brick on me.
I did after 4 years.
I see mine did not. See, and that was another thing. Well, I was the only one out of our three that didn't have it.
You haven't played enough, Steven, clearly.
But we learned our online gaming legs. At least myself. I'm not going to speak for all of us, but I think that we're all in the same ballpark because we did. You guys specifically are more PC focused or more PC centric. So you were good with getting rigs together and having a gaming night and things like that. I wasn't. I was completely a solo player up until that PS3 came out. We would get our consoles together and we would just nerd out. We had 24-hour sessions
Oh
of
yeah.
Resistance or like I said, Warhawk, Call of Duty. It was amazing. I
Kyle's
mean,
sleeping on the floor. I'm sleeping. We wake up 3 hours
there were like
later, start gaming
six
again.
or six or eight of us.
Yeah,
I can't remember his real name, but Corey. We called him Corey Feldman. What was that kid's name? It doesn't matter. Don't say his last name. But you know what I'm talking about, right, Steven? That skinny kid,
I don't
Cody.
think
I think
so.
his name really was.
Yeah,
He was
Cody. Yeah.
he was our friend Chelsea's boyfriend.
Oh yeah, Cody. Okay.
Okay, I call him Corey Feldman. Um, but we had so many people. We just get together and we would just camp out in the living room and at our apartment and play that game, or Resistance, like you said specifically. We would lock in. That was our life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like because we did that with Modern Warfare, and we all did a ton of hours in Modern Warfare. We did a ton of hours in Warhawk. And then even some of those exclusives they started on the PS3. So I feel like anytime something moved over to the PS4, like you said, The Last of Us, but it started on the PS3. So that kind of brings me back to my when I first played it. It was on the PS3, and that was when I said, this is probably the best game since Final Fantasy VII. And that's one of the things where I'm like, I really wanted to try to say the original PlayStation because Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy IX were so good. And then
That's really where I thought you would go because I know you're a big Final Fantasy guy.
Well, and see, and a lot of that had to do with it. And then there was this one game where you would skate downhill, or you would bike downhill, or you would rollerblade downhill. And I cannot remember it. It's kind of realistically, it was almost like Road Rash again. You could knock people over and stuff like that, but I just cannot remember what it was called. But I think a lot of the multiplayer had to do, came from the PS3, and then The Last of Us just had such an amazing storyline that you know I think it almost wins hands down, because when you have the memories that you built playing with other people made it so much better.
For sure, for sure. So, John, you're going to say the PlayStation 3 as well. Do
I
you want to?
am, and I'm gonna go into a lot more detail up to like why it's a great console, not just for me, but actually for
God,
the
here's where
manufacturer
we
as
get
well.
to
For
listen to how Linux is the best thing in the
Yep,
entire.
exactly.
hold on,
Someone
that
had to
is it.
say
That's
it.
right. But no, like
Hold on,
literally,
this
the
guy
the
didn't update his PlayStation 3 after what was it, year two, where they patched Linux out because he didn't want to lose the option.
yeah, I
So,
purchased a copy. Anyhow, so no, like all the reasons why I really am going to vote for the PlayStation 3 being the best console of all time are also the reasons why I hate Sony for it. Um, First and foremost, it coming out really pushed me and I think a lot of everyone else into the realm of high definition. So I had a CRT monitor on my PC and I was fine playing Modern Warfare on that. Not Modern Warfare, but Medal of Honor 2, killing Germans and talking shit online. Um, but literally, the PlayStation 3 made me buy a high definition monitor slash TV. It got me into the realm of Blu-rays. Um, it pushed the envelope where I had to buy more technology, and for like Sony and for the whole tech industry, like coming out with such a pivotal piece of technology pushed me to consume more, pushed me into buying something new and different. Um, Another really cool thing about the PlayStation hardware is the fact that it had those memory card controllers. I could use those to add stuff on. I had a PSP as well. I could take files and exchange them between the PSP and the PlayStation 3 via the memory card controller. Um, Backwards compatibility was great. I had the fat Chech A01, so I had Medieval for PlayStation X or One. I got to play that again and relive those experiences. Um, Final Fantasy VII, I played that on PC, so I don't have that nostalgia on the PlayStation for that. But Final Fantasy VIII, I really enjoyed Final Fantasy VIII, and I was able to continue playing that game on the PlayStation 3 because it had the Emotion Engine for the PS2. So I was able to
I'll
enjoy those
say
games.
I dabbled in Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9,
I didn't really play the 9.
15, so on and so on. I'll say eight's my favorite. And that's just from dabbling in them. I didn't play through any of them. 10, I played 10 as
Well,
well.
that's just because you don't read very well.
I don't even know how to. I still have yet to learn. But the thing is, but watching what was it? Squall with their gun blades.
Oh
Oh,
yeah. Mm.
oh,
I need
I
one of
again,
those.
it
I put
makes
a
no
lot of hours in
sense.
that game just from the card game that's in it. Like I was like, I need
That
to get
card
some
game
more
was
of those.
actually a lot of fun.
It
Yeah.
makes no sense, but eight's my favorite, and that's just because
No, eight's a good game.
I
It's
think
my
the
favorite.
two experiences I had was from demo disc back on the PlayStation One, and I played that demo of Final Fantasy VIII like 500 times. Sorry to
Um,
cut you off. I just
no,
wanted to
you're fine.
interject on my limited knowledge in Final Fantasy.
Also, hardware-wise, PlayStation also had that AR camera, and I got to play AR games with it, and I had a lot
What,
of fun with those.
what
I
was
mean,
that
not
game?
even just with the move controllers, but like there was this side-scroll ninja combat game, like Kung Fu Hustle or something was what it was. No, that had the dolls. That was Ragdoll Hunt. No, Kung Fu Hustle. And I remember like playing that game and so intensely fighting the enemy that I didn't even look to my left, and I punched a lamp and broke my stepmom's lamp because of that damn game. It hurt my knuckles so bad. I was into it.
That's fun.
The motion controller was great. I used that on a couple of games, just the six-axis stuff, and then the actual move controller playing the sports arena, the gladiatorial games.
Champion.
Yep, Champions. Ragdoll Kung Fu was another one of those party games that I really enjoyed, like having four people around the console playing those games, drinking or just fighting. Horde Dragon game, that was another like party game that I would just like people come over and let's just play this shit, and it was pretty cool. The online experience was really great. they had a lot of like test things like Mag, where you had so many players in the game. That was unheard of even on PC. It was just something that was crazy. And so those little tiny things together kind of make it a great console. Another portion of it that I was impressed with at the beginning was the fact that they had it was open to where I can install a PPC, operating system. It didn't have to be Yellow Dog Linux. It could have been like Windows NT 4.0 or something like that. Or if you were able to get Apple working on it, I guess you could do that because they had PPC OS at the time. I didn't dabble with that, but those things like I'm playing like Resistance 3 and having the AR gun with me and using that to track enemies on the board and melee and fire and stuff like that really got me into another, I don't know, like melding me into the game a little bit better, like getting me involved, removing me from the atmosphere or the environment that I'm around and getting me into the game. And that's why, I mean, like, I haven't done it yet, but at some point I'll jump into the VR. But like all those crazy things that Sony did, like, hey, we're putting a Blu-ray drive on it, and there was that HD war between, you know, Microsoft and their HD discs and the Blu-ray, the conglomerate on the PlayStation. That pushed me into that. The memory cards, the motion controllers, but all those were also downfalls because they didn't really like push on into the PlayStation 4. Compatibility wasn't there. So you had the PlayStation 4, you couldn't play the 1, the 2, and the 3 games on the PS4 when it first came out. They had to do like some workarounds and stuff like that. So I thought that that was a big, but that was a choice that Sony did by going into that architecture, that chip, and so it didn't go in there. But anyway, great console. Loved have
Killzone
most.
2. We haven't even brought up Killzone 2, which
I
Steven, I don't
love
think you really
Killzone 2.
got into. But John, you and
No,
I,
it didn't compete with Black Ops, in my opinion.
I, I, I agree. It was a very different game. It was a weightier game. The thing that they introduced in Killzone 2 that I loved exponentially, and I wish they would bring this into more multiplayer games,
The
is the
textures.
fact that no, it was the fact that was actually really cool, but it was the fact that you would buy in for a solid hour and they would go through roughly 5 to 6 different game modes and you would play all 5 to 6 of those games before it would kick you back to the lobby. Whereas in any and every Call of Duty, you play, a 10-minute round, you're back in the lobby. Wait 3 to 5 minutes, back into the game, back to the lobby. Whereas Killzone, you'd buy in for the hour, you'd play every single game mode that they had available. So you'd do capture the flag, you'd have zones, you'd have deathmatch, and you'd play every one before they just kick you back out. And I loved that aspect. But again, it was a little bit of a heavier game, but just to look through. And I agree with you, gentlemen. The PlayStation 3 is phenomenal. I'm looking through
It
some of the
pushed
greatest.
graphics for the time. Like I still played on PC, but then like the PlayStation, like I didn't have a Voodoo card. I forget what I had. I had some like Intel chipset and some ATI. It wasn't even AMD at the time. ATI card. But like
And
the
this
PlayStation pushed the boundaries.
for sure. And this isn't even bringing up any other indie classics, but specifically to call out some of the,
Superstar Dash
uh,
HD.
yeah, or Horde, or
Yeah, Horde.
we'll leave some of the others for later. But I
Ragdoll
mean, you
Kung
have,
Fu.
yeah, absolutely. That was a fun, or what was it? Rubber Ducky. What was that game?
Yes, yes. Rubber Duck was awesome.
But you had Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriot. You had Resistance 1 through 3. You had Uncharted 1 through 3, God of War 3, Infamous 1 and 2, Killzone 1. I'm sorry, Killzone 2 and 3, Demon Souls, Warhawk, Little Big Planet 1 and 2, two of the Ratchet and Clanks, Heavy Rain, Mod Nation Racers, I already said Resistance. Sorry, Heavenly Sword. Um, I mean,
What's
Gran
the HD
Turismo.
Wipeout? What was that one?
I think it's just Wipeout HD, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That soundtrack was phenomenal.
So
So
again, the list goes on and on and on. I agree with you, gentlemen. The PlayStation 3 is just a fantastic console. Um,
He
if
changed
it
his
just,
answer. He saw it.
I'm not changing it. I'm still going with the PlayStation 4 because some of those games, like I said, I will say that in my life, obviously, over the last 7 or so years within the PlayStation 4's life cycle, I've really kind of locked myself into a solo gamer predominantly. Part of that's moving up to Green Bay, repping for the state. But I play most of my games solo now, and I very rarely dabble into the online verse. And like I said, I'm in love with that community. So with that being said, we're going to touch over or jump over into just having a conversation. The first question that I have for you guys is how up to the now are you in with the knowledge about the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5, and Nintendo's goings on? John, I'll turn it over to you.
Hardware wise, I've definitely looked at it because I'm really interested in what AMD is doing for, you know, their RDNA 2. I was actually interested when they were doing the APU Jaguars for like the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox. Even though I didn't get those consoles, I was still very interested in the hardware that's going behind it and seeing whether what it was going to do push technology wise. Um, I mean, like, so I am seem I'm at average because some of the stuff is very vague online. Like it's all like rumor mills or tech leaks or whatever. I'll give props out to Microsoft for having more information spec wise about their console on their official website than Sony at this point. So there is that, and also releasing some of the memory card or uh, additional side hard drive or solid state drive manufacturers are also listed on there. So I've got I've got hardware down a little bit better. As far as like exclusives or like gameplay footage, I've only seen a little bit, so I can't really like this game has me excited, or
Sure.
this is going to be a reason why I'm going to buy this console.
Absolutely. Steven, where are you at on the being involved in the, new and exciting
Well, I didn't even
information?
know Nintendo was coming out with another
They're not.
console.
I'm saying
Oh,
the goings on in the sense of what they're doing with their console. As far as I know, the last update we've had was about I'm going to say 2 to 5 months ago. I know that's a big window, but they said their anticipation is that they're about halfway through the console life cycle.
well, I haven't bought or realistically even played on a Nintendo console since like the GameCube. So don't really have a whole lot of interest in that area. I think a
Sure.
lot of it just happens to be what their target audience is.
Going to release a new Time Crisis. Are you in?
If they
Mm,
release a new Time Crisis, although I have barely dabbled in Time Crisis, I'm going to buy the shit out of that game.
Yeah.
but I will say a lot of it's going to depend on how good the tech is. Because when we tried to play Rocket League, and we crashed the Nintendo console, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me.
It's that
They're
NVIDIA
lagging.
chipset, man.
Yeah, they're lagging behind. So, are you up to date on the PlayStation, the Xbox
I've
information?
looked at it. Um, I don't really have a whole lot of interest in the Xbox just because I've had the PlayStation since PS1, so
Sure.
that's kind of where I'm gonna probably end up sticking to, even if it is the not the better console this time around.
That's to be
So,
argued.
here's the situation, right? I'm just going to throw. I'm not going to necessarily throw hard facts at you guys in the sense that I'm reading from a document. I'm
You're gonna
going
throw
from
soft facts, aren't you?
I'm gonna throw soft facts, but I'm gonna give you kind of a ballpark idea of my
You're
opinion on
naming
the
me a
console.
ballpark soft fact.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Ballpark soft facts. That's my nickname. Back in high school, anyway. But my opinion on the current console race, and excuse me if I ramble for a second here, but this is where we're at, right? We're going at it from three different tactics, and that's never really been the case. Okay, I think that if we go back to maybe
Wait,
even
yeah,
the
list
original.
list the tactics before you start dwelling on the past. What do we got going on here?
I will in just a moment. So you just cool your jets there, cowboy. But if you go back to even the original NES, you have the Nintendo operating on just a completely different wavelength. Okay, I'm going to call Nintendo the grandfather of video gaming. All right, in this scenario, when we're focusing on the three specific companies, Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, I'm going to call um, Nintendo the grandfather of the video games, right? And so they engineered the idea of a home console initially, and then they've gone kind of off the rails, always changing the game, trying to innovate and make something new and exciting, starting with the Wii, starting going up to the Wii U. I don't know why you're making those faces, but I
Because
think
they didn't, but
it, it,
I think
it doesn't
Sony
right?
dominated
That's
that.
in what capacity?
Okay, so with the Wii U, they were trying to do like the whole like motion kind of play game and stuff, and sorry, PlayStation had that,
I don't agree with
and
you.
they did it
And
better.
Steven, feel free to interject because the motion controls was started with the Wii, and then Sony tried to play catch up, and then the Wii U came out and they did the tablet gaming, which they perfected outside of the actual just the ergonomic design, the fanciness of the Switch. It's not a pretty console, but they nailed it, and no one else has even followed suit. It's a handheld home console hybrid, and it is phenomenal. They
Yeah,
nailed
I
it.
will say the Switches. If the Switch wasn't so hard to get when the new Pokemon had came out, I probably would have bought one. But they were you just couldn't find them anywhere.
Sure, and part of that is because of the release timing of that game specifically, and especially right now during the pandemic, it's so hard to find a Switch. But they absolutely nailed the pick up and play versus lock it up to your TV. The only thing that they're missing is the consistent exclusives, and even that they're nailing on a front that is unprecedented. I mean, Animal Crossing alone has sold 22 million copies in the last 5 months, which is more than any other game in that time span of essentially all time, which is crazy.
Well, it didn't have a pandemic to force you to play video games either.
I agree with you there,
I'm not saying
but
that they didn't achieve it. I'm just saying there might have been other factors that played a role into that besides their ingenuity.
if you want me to do just a real quick, we can get into the arguments in just a minute. But
Well, I think a
go ahead.
lot of it has to do with their audience. I mean, you got to think about you know the target audience for a new Animal Crossing that hasn't been out in forever. There's going to be a lot of older males that are going to want it, and then every child and every someone like your wife would probably play it, even though she's not a big video game advocate, just because of how the simplicity of it, but on top of it, the complexity that does come with it.
So, not delving too much into the specific absolute details because I'm not the tech guy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they have an AMD X55 Pro because I don't know that shit. I could pull it up, but me to sit there and try to cite that stuff to you is just gibberish to me. I know it would mean a lot more to the two of you because you're a lot more tech focused. But basically where we're at is the PlayStation is locking into the old way of console gaming. And what they're focusing on is the exclusives and bringing you a consistent video game forward console. So they're going to give you a box that gives you, like I said, rock solid exclusives day in, day out, consistently 2 to 3 months apart. And that's really their selling point. We don't know the price, we don't know the launch date. We know what the box looks like, and we know some of the um, different factors that come along with it. The big negative holding them back, because again, I think their number one selling point is the exclusives. Okay. The big negative is are they anti-consumer? Because their DualShock 4 that comes out with the PlayStation or is associated with the PlayStation 4 will not work with the PlayStation 5. So I have three controllers myself. They're not going to work moving forward. They are backwards compatible, but they're not necessarily doing gaming upgrades. You brought up, Steven, I think it was Cyberpunk
Uh-huh.
then, and I think that's a big push from CD Projekt Red that they're saying like, hey, if we sell a game on the PlayStation 4, you are going to make it available on the PlayStation 5. That doesn't mean it's going to get any kind of an upgrade. Whereas with the Xbox Series X, they're guaranteeing something called the Xbox, I think it's called Smart Delivery, that if you buy a game in the Xbox ecosystem moving forward, and that's going to be with the Xbox One Series X, I'm sorry, Xbox Series X or the Xbox One X, that you're going to get the best experience that you can possibly get wherever you plug that disc or activate that game
Yeah, but who
at.
defines the best experience?
What that means, and that's a good question, actually, that's been a series of confusion, but the idea there is pretty simple. If I buy a game for that is an Xbox exclusive, so Halo Infinite, which is a game that's supposed to launch with the Xbox Series X, it's going to be playable on the Xbox One, which is the original launch of the Xbox One. Okay. That means that you're going to get the best performance that you can get out of that machine. If you play it on the Xbox One X, you're going to get that middle ground performance, which is better. but not as good as the Series X. Are we following along? The thing I hate about Microsoft so much right now is their naming convention is dog shit. They
Xbox
this
X, One, yada yada.
this is stupid. It infuriates me the idea that they're naming these things so closely because if Grandma goes to buy little Johnny their video game console, what the hell are they trying to buy? Like they're going to walk in and say, "Hey, I need the new console." That's the only way you're going to get the new console. Oh, we're sold out, but we could get you this one. Any good salesman? Okay, I'll just get him that one. Well, little Johnny already has that one. So what's going on? Grandma doesn't know. It's the most broken
Probably
naming
grandma needs to get
convention.
on the internet. Do
You're
some
not
cooking.
wrong, but grandmas don't do that.
Or
Um,
make cookies. No, so okay, so here's the deal that I have a problem with the statements that either you or Xbox had made about performance. Performance is a metric that can be done plenty of different ways of what's best on what system. Is it frame rates? Is it
I think you're focusing on the wrong things. What it boils down to is any Xbox Series X games moving forward. Okay, PlayStation 3 released The Last of Us. Can you play The Last of Us on PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1? No. But they released an upgrade, right? And a re-release, an upgraded version of The Last of Us remastered on PlayStation 4. So then you go back in and you rebuy the game for $60. I believe it was re-released at, Steven. Do you know?
I mean, I did buy it, but I think I bought it when it was like their $20 game. So I don't know what it was when it first came out.
Okay, so I'm going to say for sake of argument, it was re-released for $40. So you've put $100 into that game. The way the Xbox is doing it now is that they are no longer requiring you to re-buy that game. If I buy the game for Xbox One, I can play it on my Series X when it releases, and it's going to operate to the best of the potential that's offered. Does that make sense? So you don't re-buy games. There are no more
no, I
remasters.
understand.
There
It's
are no
like
more
it's what I've
re-releases.
had on place or on PC for a long time.
You're exactly right. And that's why in this conversation specifically, at least until the end of the conversation, we're going to leave PC out
No,
because
I'm just saying like that's an experience that I expect as a gamer, and I think a lot of other gamers might feel the same way, because a lot of them might have console, but they've also played games on PC, and so when you buy a title through a platform, you expect
I
that
don't
title to
agree
be
with
able
that.
to be played.
I don't agree with the comment that you just made because I think the majority of gamers are console gamers. Like I think that it's I mean how many copies and I think this is I guess I can look it up, but how many copies of what's a big piece what's a big multi-plat game that came out including PC? Um, we'll go to Crisis 3 because I'm sure that was released.
How about Warzone? Call of Duty
Okay,
Warzone.
that's a perfect example. How many players played that on PC versus Xbox
I don't
versus
know.
PlayStation?
Talk to
So
Blizzard.
I'm going to try to turn this out, but I do agree, and I think this is a conversation in within itself.
Yeah, we could talk about esports and StarCraft 2, and we could talk about the MOBA games, Dota and stuff like that. We could talk about those competitions that are live streamed, and we could talk about gaming as a platform, as a society. We could talk about what's got the bigger influence on it at a later date.
Well, not even at a later date, maybe just later in this conversation, because I think the PC itself has an argument to really jump up in this conversation, this
Yeah,
race,
but
because
it's not a console though.
it's being put at the forefront. Okay, here's the situation. The Xbox itself is putting itself in a position where it's not necessarily a console anymore. Like we talked about, Xbox Game Pass, which is basically you buy a subscription and you have access to all of their first party games for $15 a month. It's a Netflix model. So you're going to get all of their first party games, and they have released an exponential amount of second party, third party games through this program, and you can play that on PC, you can play that on Xbox, and eventually we're going to be able to play that literally anywhere through streaming services
On
like
your phone.
phones. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that my opinion on this matter is, and this is actually a question I'll pose to you guys, and we'll start with Steven here. With what I'm saying, based on this Xbox program, is that something that gamers want or need, or are people locked into the simplicity of being able to plug a disc in, start a program, and play a game on a home television with a controller right out of the gate? Do you think this program is smart? moving forward? Do you think it might change the game?
I mean, a lot of it's just going to depend on who the original audience is. Anyone that's on a PC is going to say yes. I should be able to build a new PC and all my games still work. Period. And that's kind of the idea of what Microsoft's trying to do with their system. Um, but I do think anytime you should just be able to put it in a console and play. And I will, a lot of times, especially when you get like PC ports and stuff from the console market, I think a lot of those games work better on the consoles because of they know what they're building it for.
You said you should be able to put it in and play. Okay.
Mhm.
Where does that mentality come from? And this is not an argument. I'm generally curious. Like, where does that,
The console market.
well, you say that, but I mean, in the PC, John, previously you played a game called Chex Quest and you still have the disc. You could plug that into your PC today and play that game. They just released a remaster. It was free. We played it. Um, but in a PlayStation 4, I can't plug in a PlayStation 1 game and play it because it's not backwards compatible to that degree.
Right, but there are some old PC games that are not forward compatible. You have to actually
Plug and play when they were
change.
like 8-bit and 16-bit. You're talking like taking an
But yeah, but
NES
like,
an NES game and playing it in the Switch.
I'm out of the
Right,
know here, but
but what I'm saying is,
are we talking floppy disk? Like you can't
I'm just
floppy
saying anything
disk
in
yet?
general. So like Fallout 3 was built for like the like Windows XP pretty much, in the early ones. It did not run on Windows 10, and Bethesda never sent out an update for it to work on Windows 10. So what you had to do is you actually had to run the game in compatibility mode, which would allow the game to think that you were playing on a Windows XP or Windows whatever, so it would run properly.
I think Steam worked that out for you, and you didn't have to do anything.
So do you think, and this goes
They
back
don't
to
do
my
it for
original
all of them
question.
though, because Fallout 3 was literally an issue that I had.
Oh, Christina never had a problem, but she played it through the Steam store, so.
I did too.
So here's my question though. Do you think Steam is the instigator of that mentality? Because I would never have bought a Super Nintendo thinking I could enter an NES cartridge and play my games moving forward. That was never even considered up until the PlayStation 2, right? With backwards compatibility. That was the initial um
Yeah.
the initial rollout of that program. And then Steam came in and just said, okay, you buy all of your video games on Steam, and going back to what, 2000, maybe 2000, right? Like, what's the earliest Steam game that exists? Do you guys have any idea? What's the earliest one you can think of? I'm thinking Deus Ex, but I'm not a PC gamer.
Steam game would probably just be Counter Strike. I mean, that was the backbone of Steam.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so when was Counter Strike released?
Shit, I don't
I
know.
mean, 1.6, which is what everyone played, 2003, 2002.
2000 straight. November 9th, 2000 was the original release date of Counter Strike, according to the information that I just looked up.
Right. I was just saying version 1.6, which was so 1.6 was the one that you could bootleg super easily, and then you could play on their system. And they that's one of the reasons why they changed over Steam. In my opinion, was the fact that there wasn't enough like bots or whatever that could catch to say you have a bootlegged copy of this game. We don't want you to play anymore, and that's why they kind of went to this whole Steam because there was a check for it originally.
Yeah, we used
Sure.
to do that with all kinds of games. Like you load it up, it's loaded up in RAM and a hard drive. You take the CD, give it to your friend, he loads up the game, and you just pass around for the LAN party. And all you need is one copy, and everybody can play.
And that's where this question really kind of rings true, because are we, and I brought this up in like episode 1 way back in the day, are we entitled now as gamers to think that just because we've bought it in the past it should work on every piece of equipment we have moving forward?
Well, here's the deal. It's gonna create brand loyalty for the people that do it. Okay? Uh, you have all your games in Steam. The likelihood that you continue using Steam because you have 400 games in Steam, there's a greater chance you're not going to leave the platform. Same thing with Apple and Android. Same thing when you're doing the Xbox store. If you have those games through that platform, that's how you access those games. It attaches you to that platform a little stronger than before.
Which this
Because
is
when
why
the consoles were ditching out and there was no backwards compatibility, it's like, well, as long as you keep that console, you're still good to go. And moving forward, it doesn't matter what you get whatever you want.
and this is just what I'm thinking that it's going to make PC. This is Microsoft's program. I think is going to make PC seem like the front runner because once people realize, because I think the vast majority of gamers play. I'm talking potentially 70-30 play on console versus PC. And I think once they realize you log into Steam and your entire library is intact, maybe it's not downloaded, but all you do is click a button and you have that game at your fingertips. Whereas if we go back to the PlayStation 4, I have access through PlayStation Now to play some of the PS3 and PS4 games, but a lot of those games are streamed, and I think potentially even some of the PlayStation 2 games. I could be wrong about that, but some of those games are streamed, specifically the PS3, because of the cell processing that was terrible. Um, but it just makes it seem so much more prevalent. And do you think the PC might have a leg up here in this conversation? I think it's going to make it jump out.
Um, I I think because the PC and what it is, and the main thing about PC is the fact that um, you could always change out parts. You can upgrade, you can continue using parts, or you can do a whole new build and still be able to use the platform for Steam, for Xbox. I think Microsoft is going the right way with being able to have a console in the living room. The, their deal is they're attacking all fronts. So the Switch, and I thought this was crazy back in the day. How come you couldn't play games like actual big title games from Sony, from Nintendo, like Mario? Why couldn't you play that on the phone? Well, now they're catching up. They're trying to capture the living room market for consoles. They're trying to keep everybody on the same platform when you go to mobile gaming. Okay,
Who is? Who is?
Microsoft.
Okay. I thought you switched to Nintendo. I thought maybe you'd switched gears. Sorry.
No, I just didn't know why you couldn't have Sonic the Hedgehog on your phone or Mario on your phone. Like why didn't they just make those ports and generate revenue? Why are they building mobile consoles when everybody's got a phone in their hand? Why are they even worried about that? Um, so I didn't understand that, but they're trying to do that whole trifecta, the whole trifecta. They're um, living room, desktop, mobile. They're trying to go after it, and you have to link all of those platforms together. You can't have a separation. So I think they're
Absolutely.
doing right that way.
So to transition a little bit away from the PC side of things, all right. To go into the Nintendo side just a little bit, as far as I know, as I mentioned before, they're about halfway through their console cycle. They're not going to do anything super crazy to try to release another one. They've always been operating off of their own world. They're going to release things at their speed. They're not trying to compete with anybody, and they're just trying to innovate in their own specific fashion. Nintendo's always looked at itself as a toy company, and I think they've really, really leaned into that with the Switch specifically. I mean, they even had um, the cardboard video gaming games. I can't remember what that was called, but it was just it was a hard buy-in to the toy side of things. Um, but with their specific track record, I mean, like I said, 22 million copies of Animal Crossing sold in a matter of 5 months. Um, they're not releasing a game that doesn't sell at least a million copies. So I'm thinking that the outlier in this scenario, because Nintendo's not going anywhere, they've locked themselves in. They had a rock solid Wii. They had a middle ground, not even a middle ground, sorry, a trash offering of a Wii U, and then just a dynamite success of a Nintendo Switch. Then you have Xbox that's trying to play the game. They're trying to put themselves out there in a capacity that makes gaming available anywhere and everywhere, PC, phones, consoles, etc. And then you have PlayStation. And I think in this console race, I think really PlayStation is the outlier. And as the three of us kind of solidified in our, initial conversation, PlayStation's our kind of bread and butter. Do we think that they're gonna be able to make it another 5 years? John, no, Steven, I'll turn it over to you because you've been quiet for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to have any issues. The Like I said before, Nintendo has changed who they're marketing to. They're not trying to compete with Sony and Microsoft anymore. They're they've done their own thing and it's worked. I mean, even their marketing skills have worked. I mean, the the exclusives, even though like even with like the new Pokemon or whatever. I mean, even if they just release Pokemon every year and they just made it a little bit better each time, I think that would be enough to keep the console alive.
Do you think Nintendo, and I know, John, this is completely outside your wheelhouse, so I'm going to keep with Steven for just a second here. Do you think that Nintendo is catering a little bit too much to their audience, the kiddie market? Because, I mean, just to look over, and this is, again, just from memory, um, their last 3 years, and maybe a little bit more, but they have Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, they have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is a remaster and a re-release of a Wii U game. They have Splatoon 2, which is essentially just a deluxe version of Splatoon for the Wii U. They have ARMS, which is an exclusive. They have Paper Mario, which was just released a couple, I think it was last month actually, maybe even this month. They have Animal Crossing. They have the Pokemon you're talking about. I mean, would you buy a Nintendo console in its current state today?
I mean, it's going to come back to my taste. My taste doesn't always come with what they're releasing. I mean, Pokemon is the only reason why I was thinking about buying the Switch for Pokemon was also due to the fact that my friends had it, and it kind of goes back to the simple back when PlayStation, the PS3, and the Xbox were doing that console battle. I think a lot of us were buying the same console because we already knew that, well, if I buy the PlayStation, I can play with these friends. If I buy the Xbox, I'm going to isolate myself, or I'm only going to be able to play with these friends. And that's kind of one of the reasons why, with like the Switch alone, I would have bought it when it like during the middle of that hype. But I don't know if I would buy one now, just because that the hype was gone.
It's
But they don't
actually
release. Go ahead.
So
I was just going to say it's an interesting conversation because you tend to float towards the ecosystem, and I know you are. I mean, we'll get into this a little bit later, but you play a lot of online games with a lot of online friends, so
Hmm.
you tend to go where the crowd might be at.
Right. You want. I mean, and that would be with anybody really. I mean, if John and I went and bought a Xbox and we were playing Call of Duty Warzone and we were enjoying the piss out of it, and you're like, I don't have an Xbox, you know, eventually you would be like, you know what, I pulled the trigger. I went and got one because you wanted to play with us. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure. What were you going to say, John? Sorry, I cut you off.
well, except for you just grab a PC and play Warzone with us. No, so
Yeah,
okay,
you
so
may grab a PC, but what is a standard? If I was one to
we're
build
gonna
a
talk about
PC, that,
Pokemon. So
all right.
Pokemon, do they have a battle arena in this new one?
They have like a raid system where so like your Pokemon and my Pokemon
No, I'm talking about
will.
arena, like it's one trainer versus another trainer.
I don't know. I mean, I don't play the
I don't
game, so I
know.
couldn't answer all those, but I think so.
Yeah, I'm like
Were you able to
the
pull your
from
Pokemon in from
Pokemon
the
guy.
mobile game, the Niantic mobile game?
No,
No, they're not exclusive.
Well, see, that turns me off. Like I'm a Pokemon fan from Red and Silver on the Game Boy. In fact, that's why I got a Game Boy. And I talked to about this earlier about the mobile market. You have the biggest audience right there because everybody's got a phone in their hands. But if you were able to link your mobile account for Pokemon with your Switch account and have upgraded graphics and this battle arena kind of thing on the big
Well, they've done that
screen,
with their other games. So you could pull your Pokemon. I mean, even back from when Red, Blue, Yellow was out, you could trade those Pokemon into the Silver,
yeah. But I'm talking about
Green, and whatever.
today though.
I think you still can, but I think because the Pokemon Go is completely separate from Nintendo, that's why it wasn't made. It wasn't when they coded it, the coding wasn't there to do that job.
Yeah, but you just link it up. It's just ones and zeros. You have this Pokemon at this level. Just
If
port
it's,
it
I mean,
in.
if it's just
Link your
ones and
account.
zeros, then I should be able to play my Xbox game inside my PlayStation console.
in regards to specifically Pokemon, they have an entire world. They could create an entire ecosystem based off across all of their platforms. Being, and I say platforms being, like you said, Pokemon Go, Pokemon Red, Blue, Gold, Green, blah 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 blah. Right? Or even the Pokemon Snap, which are releasing supposedly later this year, etc. Does that sell you, Steven? Pokemon Snap?
Pokemon Snap, no. But
Oh,
do you remember the Pokemon Stadium?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's what I'm
do.
talking
The
about. The battle
Pokemon
arenas.
Stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's they could create an entire ecosystem with Pokemon games specifically and get hundreds of thousands of millions of people, not hundreds of thousands of millions, but you understand what I'm saying, people to buy into the Pokemon ecosystem. Sadly, Pokemon's never really been my scene. My daughter loves Pokemon, my oldest daughter. She would buy into it for that specifically. I almost bought the most, not the most recent, but the one before that, Pokemon Sun and Moon, I think it was, for the 3DS. For her, I just didn't think she would get into the, um, you know, the combat system. I thought it was probably a little bit outside of her wheelhouse. She likes the Smash Brothers side of things. But what I will say about Nintendo specifically, the fact that they've locked themselves into the handheld market, which no one else has, means for me, they've set themselves into a world that puts them as the outlier and makes them live on. They are in no way, shape, or form even a concern for Sony and Microsoft. And for the same reason, Sony and Microsoft are not a concern for them
They will
because
be
they're good.
soon.
They won't. I mean, well, you talk
Microsoft's getting
about
into
with
the mobile, and they're not
I
going to be
just
hardware dependent.
I just don't think that mobile market, the games are not hitting on the youth like the Nintendo does. Those
Uh,
IPs that
oh
Nintendo
yeah.
owns don't exist in an Xbox. I mean, there is not one Xbox, and correct me if I'm wrong, and again, I know both of you aren't necessarily Xbox ecosystem people, but there's not one Xbox exclusive that exists for youth that I can think of off the top of my head. I
Nope.
mean, they have Halo, they have Gears of War, and they have Forza. And as far as I can think, that's all they have. And that's the big problem that Xbox currently sits on is what are they going to do about their future IP? They're trying to bring a little bit back. I don't know if either of you watched the most recent Xbox announcements, but they're bringing back Fable, which was a fun series 1 through 3, but I don't think it has the elasticity to carry on and bring a whole new outside world in. I think Gears of War caters to very specific, mature gamers. John, you and I played through the most recent Gears 5, and I enjoyed my experience, but it's not something that I'm going to buy a Xbox Series X for because we got to play that on the place or the PC. And because of Game Pass, it was available. I spent $15. No, I'm sorry. I actually got a month free of Game Pass in a trial version, and I got to play Xbox. I'm sorry, Gears 5 for literally $0. And because of that, I've spent $0 in Xbox's ecosystem for the last 6 years.
yeah. Well, I think they put an article out stating that their Game Pass isn't actually turning a profit yet. They're still uh, they're still in that early stage of needing to get more subscribers.
And I think for that reason, I think Xbox Game Pass could go one of two ways. And when I say Game Pass specifically, I'm talking about the Xbox ecosystem in general. It's either going to change the face of gaming to exclusively a Netflix style model outside of the handheld console market, which I'm going to say Nintendo is on the outside, which means it's going to shut Sony down. And I know that's an extreme statement, but it's going to either shut Sony down in the sense that people are going to buy in and say this is the way to go. For $15 a month I can get every game I want outside of third party exclusive, I'm sorry, third party multi-plat games, or it's going to be a massive failure. Because as a gamer specifically, I personally, and I know this is a little bit off topic and kind of random, I have a little bit of I don't know, option fatigue. I'm the kind of person that goes into Netflix and I scroll through menus for 20 minutes and I just go, I'm just not going to watch Netflix because I can't find what I want to watch, right? For the same reason I had that Xbox Game Pass as we're playing Gears 5 when we weren't playing. I go in and I'm scrolling through the games. I'm like, man, that looks awesome. 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 Yeah, none of these are, I'm just not going to buy into this. Or I'll download 10 games and I'll play each one for 20 minutes and they go, yeah, this isn't catching my attention. And I move on. And I really do think that that specifically is kind of a detriment to video games because if I do buy a game at face value for $60 or whatever the case may be, then I'm more inclined to just barrel through it in some
You're
capacity.
invested $60 or
Ex-
40 bucks.
exactly. So I think I know. my personal opinion, and again, and I'm curious to your all's opinions. John, I'll turn it over to you in a second. I think that this Game Pass idea actually hurts the gaming market because it doesn't give the developers as much attention as they deserve. And I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think the majority of us have that same concern. We know what we like, we know what we're looking for. I'm not going to just jump in and dabble in a game to see how I feel because it exists in a market that has 5,000 other games that I could jump into. What are your thoughts on something like that, John?
I like to own things, and maybe it's because I'm a greedy capitalist. I still buy Blu-rays. I still buy or purchase movies on like Amazon Prime. I mean, I do subscribe to
I'm not,
some.
I'm not saying,
Hold
I'll
on.
let you finish.
The
I'll let
deal
you,
is like you own it. So there is
but you,
that.
but you don't. Steam doesn't allow you to own it, right? All of that is technically rented. If Steam was gone tomorrow, you would lose every video game in your catalog. You
No,
just
I
told
think
me you have
I
400.
get to download those titles and save them. I think they went to court in France about uh, selling their selling used titles. So if I bought a game and I want to sell it to you for $5 or whatever, like I think in Europe now at least you can do that, and I think that's how it's going to become. It's going to become that there's going to be used market in there. But the deal is like you own it. You're not leasing it. You don't know when it's going to be taken away. That was a problem I had with the PlayStation 3 is I purchased some movies because I didn't pay for cable or anything like that. So I purchased this television series, and then one day Sony lost the rights to it. And when my PlayStation 3 died, when I got a new PlayStation, I had to show them receipts so that I could re-download it. It was ridiculous.
The same thing
Um,
happened to me, actually. I was just going in to watch a movie, Amazing Spider-Man 2, that we talked about on the last episode. Um, and I had purchased it through the Sony network, and for whatever reason, the game didn't exist, or I'm sorry, the film didn't exist in that memory anymore. So I had to go back in and watch it by other means.
yeah. So I and I don't know if that's going to be a worry for people that turn and burn games, you know, but I think owning a game, I don't like subscription services to begin with. Like there's a software that was out there that I could pay, I think it was like $5 a month or whatever. And I went ahead and paid the $200 to have the software outright. I get the updates, I purchased it, it's my software. Maybe I'm not, the majority of people clearly they're moving in that direction for a reason, but that's not me. I mean,
I
Adobe
don't, I
Cloud did
don't,
the same thing.
I don't know if you're right though. I don't know if they're moving for a reason. I think they're testing the waters to see how it falls. Steven, what's your opinion on the Netflix model for video games? Are you on board?
I mean, I think in the long run, it's the route that will be the smart route. It's the route that everyone will take. I think some of it, what will end up happening is the the subscription will get so cheap that everyone will just be on it, and then the developers will probably have some kind of way to sell you something from inside the game so they can reap more of the direct benefits, which I'm not necessarily a fan of that, but I think that's what we're probably going to be looking
You're talking
towards.
like microtransactions, Steven?
Yeah, but
Stuff like that,
it
add-ons?
would just depend on whatever it would be. Like a microtransaction that would be um, not that they're not like a pay to win style, but a pay to support style. So if I get like Sea of Thieves has been on the Microsoft Game Pass forever,
Yep.
and if they say they launch a bunch of different skins for your pirate to look like this, and I want to look like Peter Pan or whatever instead, and it's selling for $4, then I said, I'm giving Rare Games $4 directly versus whatever Microsoft is giving them. But I think that's the way it's going to be going forward. Just because, I mean, just look at all the titles that are on Netflix.
I think we're gonna have too much
Well,
churn. Just too many games to try to
I agree.
captive audience. They're just gonna have less and less depth. And
Well,
James here, he's playing story-based games. So I mean, like I play them as well, where they're not online based, so you don't have to follow the herd like you, Steven. You're following the herd, who's playing what at any given time. I want to be part of that group.
which
Um,
is a perfectly respectable
yeah, no,
way
I'm
to
not
play.
saying there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. That seemed aggressive, and I don't think
hey,
you meant
I
it
gotta
that
go,
way.
guys.
Are you
So,
serious?
no, I'm kidding.
Huh.
Yeah,
I
he's
was
got it.
so
He's got it.
upset.
The hurt is calling.
Uh,
The hurt is calling.
here's two things I want to touch on. The first one is a statement. The second one is a question. All right. So the first one being, you nailed it, John. I don't know if you noticed. I was pointing at you. You nailed it. With this model, they're going to lower the gaming budget because they understand that the bar is for everyone. All the games are for everyone, and we're not making a profit off of a game specifically. We're making a profit off of an ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to cater that budget, which I'm fine with as long as the game fits into the realm of what we expect. And when I say expectations, I'm talking all the way down to the 8-bit Mega Man style, all the way up to the astronomical story experience of The Last of Us Part 2. Okay. So all of that is the expectation. I'm not saying I expect anything up here exclusively. I'm not saying I'm expecting anything down here exclusively. You guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm saying that the as long as the spectrum is explored, because what it feels like to me right now is that Xbox is buying in solely to the expectation that the spectrum is going to be here. And that's going to be Halo Infinite is an experience. So you're going to get a 7-hour experience, and we'll build on that in the future. Fable is going to be a 7-hour experience, and we're going to build on that in the future, which means that the Destiny model, the Division model, the Forza model now, that was the Forza is no longer Forza and Forza Horizon, which is alternating years. It's it's here. And we're going to build on that in the future. I don't like that idea. I want to play an experience that's in a box. I don't need everything to be a service. I want it to be, here's your game. It's 7 to 40 hours, whatever the case may be. And I feel like that window, which is over here, is where Sony is capitalizing. And I think that's where the game market needs to exist.
I
And for
agree.
that
I
reason,
agree with that being the right stance to take, but you got to think about it the other way is, you're a smaller developer, and if you happen to go into the subscription service with Microsoft or whoever, you have a chance of getting more money than you would have in the first place because you couldn't have raised it yourself.
I think so.
hold on, hold on. I'm gonna let you go for a second, John. But what I'll say there is, when you're a smaller developer. When I think of smaller developers right now, I think of things like Hollow Knight. I think of things like Shovel Knight, which I'm not stuck on the Knight thing. It just
Mm-hmm.
is the first two that popped into my head. I think of things like Broforce. I think of games like not Hunt Showdown. Damn it, what's that? Hunt Down, the game I was talking about previously. They go into it with an idea and they build on that within the realm of their budget. If you lock into Microsoft, you get a paycheck up front, and then every other console you release on, you're going to get a paycheck for that as well. So I think the smaller
But
developers
is
are
the
still.
is the money is the money the same across the board?
I
Because if
really,
because if you
I
look
don't.
at it from like a Spotify perspective on their subscription, if I go in and I listen to this musical artist, that musical artist is getting paid,
See,
even
whenever
though
we go into that conversation, right? We talk about Spotify specifically. I think it's almost apples to oranges because Spotify pays like 0.07 cents for every single listen that you get on Spotify, whereas their bread and butter is going to be live music, right? I'm gonna as a concert, as an artist, a musical artist, I'm gonna get the majority of my financials from merchandising and live performances. Whereas if we went back 15 years, we made tons of money off of CD sales. That's not the case anymore. That's been eliminated thanks to the internet. Everything got pirated. It just makes it way different. Whereas I even feel like pirating, and maybe I'm completely wrong. You guys would know better than me, but I feel like video game pirating has dropped exponentially in the last 20 years. I
I
mean,
mean,
if I go back to the early 2000s, I feel like that was the talk of the town. If you could get a game for free, it was the coolest thing ever, right? You never hear that. And maybe it's just because I'm not in that ecosystem anymore. I'm not a high schooler anymore. Maybe people are still stealing games like crazy. I don't feel like that exists much.
there's Steam keys can get lifted sometimes in big batches, and that does happen, and then they get sold on like G2A. I'm not hopeful I don't offend them if they listen or find us or whatever. They did
Hey,
go they
nobody watches this. That's why we're
they did go
nobody
to court.
entertainment.com.
Um, no, so I don't think pirating is as prevalent as it used to be, but it is still a problem. So
Well, here's
maybe not
here's
yeah, yeah.
here's the other point I was going to make. Here's my question, John. On a yearly basis, not taking into consideration the COVID pandemic, how many movies did you see in theaters a year on average, just over the last 3 years, not counting COVID?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 12.
Okay, Steven, how about you?
I probably average one a month to one every 2 months
So probably 12, 6 to 12, right? I'm
over
probably
3 years.
no. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. How many did you average a year? So if you saw one every other month, that would be six. 12 a year maximum, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just depends on what's coming out.
Sure.
I don't go out of my way to go see something, but I mean, John and I would go to
I
the
need to increase
Alamo.
my number actually. I forgot. So,
Nope, can't. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
well, we got that local independent theater in town, and generally I'd have to find those. No, I'd literally have to find those films on the internet, and I would pay to rent them or purchase them there. If they but if they have them at the draft house, I'll go there, have a beer, and watch it with friends and stuff like that. I've watched movies I would never watch ever on my own at my house, but because there's an audience, they have this VHS with the vengeance and they're horrible horror movies, but it's like the crowd and the gathering. So I will pay money to see this film that you'd have to pay me to watch alone. So
Are those recent movies or are they older releases?
those are older releases.
Okay,
Those
so
I'd
those
say,
VHS with the
so
vengeance, they were
exclude
released on VHS.
uh,
so right. So exclude those.
and if it
So
Okay,
was
well then
easier
I still
to,
they still count because I saw um Somer Midsummer there.
sure.
That was a new release that I watched over there. So I
So you're
still
thinking 16, 18?
probably yeah, maybe
Okay.
saying if
closer
it
to
was
20.
easier to go, like say to the Alamo, it definitely would be much higher. The local movie theater is just garbage here,
That's true.
Sure.
so
Sure.
it's boycotting it out
Yeah,
of
we
despite.
drive to Springfield for it. So
I'm probably in the 20 to 24 camp. I probably before COVID, I probably saw an average of two movies a month. And what I'm getting at here is whenever we switch to the streaming service, and I don't know if this proves anything, it's just an opinion, but when we switch to the streaming service, does it make you watch more content or less content? Do you wait for it to come out because you know it's going to be free on Netflix, or do you still go to the theater to see it? I know, John, you like to support local business, so that's why you frequent the local theater in your hometown. And
not
I
North
applaud you
Star,
for
not
that.
North Star.
Right. That's I mean that's owned by whatever company that owns that now. I don't even know. Um, we have the Marcus Theater in my area. I don't want to tell you which town I live in, but it's literally on my shirt. But um, yeah, the Marcus Theater, I don't have any problem supporting them. I just love film and I see as many movies as I can in the theater. Um, but I'm just curious between the three of
But are
us.
you going out of your way to see bad films too, or
I'm not
did this film have your interest?
my interests are exclusively again, you hit the nail on the head. If my interest if it piques my interest, I watch it. I never watch a film that I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna like this. I don't do that. If I was around a group of people that I would be pleasantly entertained by a bad film, like John, for instance, I think that would be more inclined, right? Like the other night, we talked about this last week. I watched Piranha 3 Double D or Piranha Double D, whatever it's called. I knew that movie was shit, but I thought it would be shittily entertaining. So I watched that. But as far as all the movies in the theater, I do go see some smaller name movies or movies that aren't big box office appeals, like Midsummer, for instance. Although it's a mainstream release, it's still an A24 experience, which is a smaller production company. So same thing with like Hereditary. I have a tendency to I see a movie that I don't think is going to be heavily supported, and I like to go see those because they don't get mainstream appeal. My point in all of this is simply putting it all now into the COVID world, right, where everything is getting released online, everything is getting released streaming, everything is bypassing the theaters. How many current releases have you guys watched?
I've watched zero.
I think I saw the new Scooby Doo one.
Wasn't that the
It
worst
gets lost
ever
in my
seen?
opinion.
Do what?
Wasn't that the worst movie you've ever seen?
I only got to see the last half of it because I was over at a friend's house and their kids were watching it, and I was like, "Oh, is this the new Scooby Doo movie?" And they were
I
like,
bought
"Yeah."
that shit for $20 so my kids could watch it. And I was a huge Scooby Doo fan when I was a kid. And I was like, there's no way this is going to be terrible. And then Simon Cowell walked in within the first 20 minutes. And I was like, what the fuck is this? It was awful. But all I'm saying is I do think, and John, I'll turn it over to you in 1 second. I just think that the streaming service, I think it dilutes, like you were saying, John, too much communication, too much information, and it dilutes the message. No one gets the focus that I personally think that they deserve. And I think the same thing happens for Steam in the PC market. We're scrolling through games, looking at deals, and I mean, we came across a game earlier. I don't remember the name of it. It was $5, and I specifically said to you, I'll wait till it's on sale. It looks cool. I'll wait till it's on sale for
Oh, it's
$5.
yeah, $5. We just spent $60 on a bundle.
80. I got
Oh,
yes, I got was it Rage 2, Doom Eternal.
dude, I was ready to
Um
pull the trigger on that Ninja Warrior side scroller game. I
that's
was gonna
that's
I was gonna buy it for $5, and I was gonna buy the soundtrack for $5 because that
that's
was a
what
bomb
I'm talking.
soundtrack.
But we've gone a little bit off the rails there.
So we're
Um
talking about the streaming platform,
just specifically streaming
subscription
platform. What are your
model.
thoughts? Do you think it might dilute the message? Do you think it is that Stephen already stated, and maybe I'm wrong, Stephen, you can change your opinion or what I understood is your opinion. Do you think it's the future? John, I'm going to let you go first, but what I understand is Stephen's suggesting it's the future and maybe the way things might be going. John, do you think that's a good model to adapt to or a harmful model?
So here's the deal. I think it is definitely what the industry is pushing towards, and I feel that it's going to be detrimental from my experience on the video side. It's detrimental. I think it's going to hurt smaller indie studios. Indie studios have been using platforms like Indiegogo or GoFundMe to do their projects that they got hearts and minds before, and they get the money to push into development. You brought up Hollow Knight. That is one that started off on I think it was Kickstarter, and it got crowdfunding to start it up, and then it's on everything. It's on Linux, Windows, Mac, Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox. Um, I feel that the and it's all going to be up to the platform. So the ecosystem of Xbox, if they decide that you're a no-named, um, studio, we're going to give you less money because
Let
they know
me
they
let
can't
me
sell enough copies, or you're not going to have enough man hours. It depends on how they do the system, but I think it's going to hurt. I think it's going to hurt. There's going to churn out too much shit, and I'm not going to care.
Let me feed into Hollow Knight for 1 second. That's a game that I legitimately had interest in playing, but I was always like, there's too much mainstream stuff coming out. I'm going to play that first, right? And then I finally bought into the Game Pass on Xbox, Microsoft specifically. Whenever we were playing, and I saw that Hollow Knight was available on the Game Pass. Now, Hollow Knight specifically has a Metacritic score of 87 and a 9.1 user score. Okay, so it is arguably considered a great, if not like amazing game, right?
Yeah, it looks good.
Um, I ended up picking it up on Game Pass. I played it for 15 minutes and it didn't hit in the way that I wanted it to. So I shut it off and I did not go back. I canceled the subscription and I haven't touched it since. So they made no money off of me. Whereas what I would have done is bought it on the Switch or the PlayStation 4 and I would have played it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 hours, whatever. But they would have still gotten paid because of it. Does that make sense? And I know that's kind of a loose example, but I think that that's where my mind is with the subscription model. Steven, what's your opinion on it?
I think a lot of it's going to still come back to how is the how are they getting paid? Period. You know, if there's because I mean, even with the subscription model, with your same example, you might be more willing to do the subscription model because you can hit a game for 15 minutes and go, this one isn't my taste. I'm glad I didn't spend $20 on it. Let me go play another one. That one didn't work either. I'm glad I haven't spent
Yeah.
$40. Let me go buy this. Let me go play this last one. Oh my God, this is it. This is the game, and you know your subscription just paid for that game as well as helped these other two guys out. Even though you don't like it, I'm not going to play Animal Crossing. I have zero interest in playing Animal Crossing. But does that make Animal Crossing a bad game? No.
Right. And I
So
think you really hit the nail on the head there. I think it's what you get out of the experience. But I as a personal opinion, as a gamer for the subscription model, and I know we spent a lot of time talking about PC. We've spent a lot of time talking about Microsoft. Um, I just I have that anxiety if I know something else exists that I might enjoy more, that I tend to jump around, and then I don't give anything my full attention, and then I find myself in a position where I'm not giving it a fair shake. For instance, Ghost of Tsushima, which I'm playing right now for the PlayStation 4. Um, I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I was loving it, and then Ghost of Tsushima came out, and I was like, this is where I need to put my time into because we started up this conversation piece that John and I were having, and I decided that I wanted something new and fresh to talk about, and I put about 2-3 hours into the game, and I said, this isn't tickling my fancy. I wasn't enjoying as much as Assassin's Creed, but I want to push through, right? I bought it for $60. I want to push through it. I want to have a conversation piece, and now it's one of my top games of the year because I invested for the $60. If I hadn't bought it for the $60, I probably would have dipped out. I probably would have moved on.
so you
I
think
know. Go ahead.
so you part of your argument sounds like unless I spend money on it, it can't be good.
I think that it needs to do more on the front end to capture the attention. And also, I think that'll alter the game market. I think that they'll front load things a little more instead of bleeding into an experience. In a game like uh, Persona 5, Final Fantasy video games, things like that. I mean, the tutorial for a Final Fantasy game is what, 10 hours long? Because they're teaching you the game because they're implementing I mean, they're deep as fuck. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Right.
they're just, they're tougher to buy into at first glance. So, um,
Here's
we'll
here's
put,
my here's my
sure,
question on you.
sure.
So the new console has came out, and the rumor has it that all the games are going to run $70. Are you going to spend $140 to buy two games, or would you be more willing to spend $70 on that one game and then spend $20 on the subscription service and see all of the store based games that they have and play those for free? Because
I love this question. I love it. And I'm going to let John answer it first if he has interest in it. Let me put it out here this way. Let's say, John, your PC doesn't exist, okay? You're bought into a console market, okay?
Okay.
And like he just said, the conversation, we talked about this the other day, is that the games rumored are going up to $70. For some, they're already announced they're going up to $70. So are you more likely to subscribe to a service or pay the $70 price tag per release?
I'm gonna buy my $70 game. And can I get some of these store games for like 5 or 15 bucks? Like, do I have that option, or do I have to do subscription to get access to those games?
you could probably buy them separately, but you could
That's what
spend
I'm thinking.
$20 and get all of them.
Yeah, but I don't get them though.
If I realistic, and this is an argument that I know you and I would have, any
Here,
digital game that you purchase, you don't
It's
really
fleeting.
own.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah.
same thing with Steam. I don't you said in
I understand.
France.
I understand you guys want to argue semantics, but we still have a
That's not
PlayStation
semantics.
3 in
They
this
could be
house
gone.
because
Yeah.
sometimes in a blue moon I'll spin it up and I'll play Super Stardust HD.
Sure.
But I don't have
But
to pay for that. I haven't paid for a PlayStation Plus membership in years. But I
yeah.
own it, so I get to still play it.
My opinion on the matter is, and I think this is It's not because of financials. It's more for my personal. I don't know. I think I'm just being stubborn. I think the $70 price point is a line in the sand. The closer and closer we get to $100 game, the more it makes me uncomfortable because it is. I understand it's a luxury hobby. Um, I don't think that I'll pay $70 for a game outright. And part of that's my age because I don't have that same built up like excitement and anxiety for not being involved out of the gate. But like I just brought up previously, I bought Doom Eternal, Rage 2, Fallout 76, and the most recent what is that? Wolfenstein game, right?
Hmm.
All of that for $82. So almost the essential, like almost the cost of a new release, right? If I just waited, Doom Eternal came out 4 months ago. So if I just sit on the back burner for a minute and let those games drop in, Final Fantasy VII Remake is on sale right now for $40 on the PlayStation Network, and it came out literally 2 months ago. So it makes it kind of tough. So I don't know. I think maybe if I do sit on it and knowing myself, I think I'm still going to buy games at face value, but I'm going to wait until they do go on sale. I just can't see myself buying into the subscription model flat out. I like it as an idea. I don't know that I like it in practice because I know myself and I have that anxiety that if I don't buy in right away, that I don't continue. If that makes sense, Stephen. What's your opinion? Where do you fall?
I mean, I think it's. I mean, it's. I don't have a subscription to any of them. I probably won't buy one right off the bat for the same reasons. But it's because. But if I can find 3 or 4 games that are going to be worth it, then you might catch me with oh, there's a deal to buy it for a year and it's 25% off or whatever that might be. But I think a lot of it's going to come down to, you know, even with the money side that you were talking about. I mean, how many Netflix shows are amazing and how many Netflix shows are awful? But that's all coming from the same pool. And do you think that Netflix is giving every studio the same amount of money?
Probably not in the grand scheme of things.
So, and I
Probably
mean, even PlayStation has their own subscription model for the same thing. You can buy or you can play all of their new games, or well, maybe not the new ones, but you can play all their games for $20 a month. So,
right. Well, that's a very good point. Well, with that point, we are going to do this last segment because I think that it is
Talk about
fun, and we
hardware
want to.
now.
No, 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 no. We're
Damn
not
it.
going to talk about hardware, John. We've gone for just nearly 2 hours. We want to wrap this thing up to some capacity, but we're going to end this with a nice little bow, and we're going to continue the segment of what are our favorite games of all time. John, I'm going to let you go first. Steven, you're going to go second, and I'm going to go third. And I want you guys, Steven specifically, since you're new to this process, you can just tell us your favorite game of all time, but you're going maybe or one of your favorite games, but specifically your favorite game. John, you had one last week that you were hinting towards. Do you still have that in mind?
Yeah, no, I definitely know. Actually saved it on a sheet on my desktop on my PC, but I don't even need to look at it because this game I don't even know why I was enthralled with it, and I had a lot of fun with it. But Patapon on the PSP, like a very simplistic war game that had basically you had to do certain segments or pushing buttons in certain order depending on the music and then how much rage or built up aggression you had. And I don't know, I would play that game forever. And it didn't matter if I was in the back of a car or in the passenger seat or at home laying in bed, I would be pata just
And
playing that
that's
damn game.
Patapon's a rhythm game released originally for the PSP. There was Patapon 2 and then Patapon 2, no, Patapon 1 and 2 were both remastered and re-released for the PlayStation 4, I do believe here recently actually. So that was yeah, it's fun. I played. I think it was the second one I ended up purchasing on the PlayStation 4. I got it for like $15, and there was just a little bit of latency which runs a rhythm game.
Yeah, you
But
can't
I
get
think
latency.
that's an awesome pick, John. I
I mean, it was
appreciate
just,
you.
I don't know, it was just simple. You could dive in and just play that level or whatever, and there was a little bit of strategy to go in. You know, I'm a strategy kind of guy. I play those turn-based games, but like, I don't know, like the ebb and flow, and then you have this beat, and you kind of have to get it down. It's I don't think I've played another game that's like that. And I've played like dancing games and stuff like that, but that, yeah, like Dance Dance Revolution at Tilt, the arcade in the mall.
Here's what I'll say
Guitar
is
Hero,
this,
that's not even
Stephen,
on the top of mine, but Patapon, that's the game.
Stephen, you have witnessed just a day that will live in infamy. This is the first game that he has listed as one of his favorites that is not a PC exclusive. It is
It's not even
amazing.
on
So
PC as far as I know.
that's true.
I'd buy it though.
In my opinion, it was not an amazing game either. So
What?
Well, Steven, I could go through his list, and that's not the point. We have,
but I will say I don't have rhythm.
we're building to something. I've seen you play Guitar Hero. You got a little bit of rhythm.
Uh, I mean, if you say 1 1 2 2 1 2 1, but you put a 3 in there, and I'm out.
You're fucked. But we're building to something here. Um, but with that in mind, Steven, I just want to know. Like I said, I hope in the future you join us on some content. I think the conversation was a lot more just involved. It's fun having a third body in there. We got to get you a camera to get you involved. But with that being said, give me one of your favorite games of all time.
Uh,
If you
is it
don't say a
limited to?
specific game I'm thinking of, I'm gonna drive
Is it
to
is
and
it?
punch you in the face.
Oh well, then I'll definitely just mess it up then.
Oh, okay.
So I think a lot of it comes down to the genre of the games that are out there.
Just give me one of your favorite games of all time. It could be anything.
I'd say the original Final Fantasy VII.
And
And
that's good choice.
that one was it was my favorite game for so long. And I have one that's I would say is my new favorite, but I feel like sometimes when you make a sequel, it ruins the first one. So, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Sure. What? So you played it for so long, but is it the story that brought you in? Is it the characters? Is it the presentation? Like, what drew you to that?
I think a lot of it had to do with the first. It was the first game that when you get used to playing, Mario Brothers, where it's just a side scroller and there's no story to it. It's just go from left to right and save the princess. Like, how did that kind of game become so popular? Where you get the Final Fantasy. And Final Fantasy VII was my first Final Fantasy. On top of that, so when you get a game like that, that really hooked me into the JRPGs. Where I've gone into a whole rabbit hole of all those games now, where I'm like, this game is super awful, but I have so much fun with it because it has a different complexity than all the other games that are on the market.
Sure. Well, that's a fantastic choice, of course. I'm going to go and I'll give a little bit of background here. John has been inspiring me actually, not verbally or intentionally, but he's inspired me just a smidge to lean towards the more obscure because I said from the very get-go that my top list is going to kind of read very, very obvious. Um, you sit down and you look at my favorite games of all time, I kind of go a little bit more towards the mainstream, but this one I'm going to lean a little bit more towards the indie side. It's going to be a PlayStation 3, I believe, PlayStation 3 exclusive. I think it was later released on the PSP, and a sequel was released for the PlayStation 4. But I'm going to go with what? What did you say?
That princess.
You've been saying that for weeks. No,
Dude,
it is.
I was actually thinking about that game earlier. I was like, what game was that? So that was a
Is
lot. That game was a lot of fun. It was very, very aggravating,
Yeah.
so
especially if
I'm
you
gonna
play with
say
John because he was just bad at it.
I'm going to say one word, and I want you guys. I'm going to let Steven guess first, but I want to see which route you take. I'm going to say pixel junk, but Steven, where do you think I'm going to go with it?
I mean, so I never liked Pixel Junk Eden, and I know you played the piss out of it with John and some of the other guys, but Pixel Junk Monsters was a tower defense game is a lot of fun. So I'm gonna go with that one, but I know it's probably wrong. It should be Eden.
Steven or John, where are you going?
Monsters.
It is Monsters. You are
Yep.
right. I have both of them on my top games of all time list, and it is neck and neck in this whole conversation. This entire 2 hours that we've been talking, I've been locked in. Like, which way am I going to go? Because they both have merits, and you're right. I probably put more hours and just general, um, just overall time, thought, enjoyment into Eden. But tower defense is a genre that's massively underappreciated, and I think that Pixel Junk Monsters number one nailed it for what it was, but also
Uh-huh.
it fit perfectly into the PlayStation ecosystem. The way that you built up your towers, you'd go hover over. First of all, you would take down a tree to build a tower, and then you just stand. And instead of just waiting time or wasting time waiting for an enemy to approach, you're upgrading your tower by hanging out. Right? That's how you built up your your attacks versus constantly just collecting money based on kills, which is something that was unique to the genre and I still don't know, to my knowledge, has been replicated. I've dabbled in other games like Kingdom
Yeah.
Rush, Balloons. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, so they did a tower defense style in Warcraft 3 back in the mod system where, and it was a lot of fun because you could play different races, and it was when you played against other people, it was just who could survive the longest. But the only thing I don't like about tower defense, even though I do enjoy them a lot, is once you beat the level, or once you know how to beat it the right way, rarely is there another strategy that that does it.
For
Does that
the
make
Sure.
that
sense?
level, that one level.
Correct. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
Which is awesome. And I just think the tower, like I said, tower defense is massively underutilized. You just generally, I can't even remember the last tower defense game besides Kingdom Rush for the mobile device. I think it's kind of everywhere mobile, but I can't remember the last tower defense game that came out, and I think Pixel Junk Eden really nailed it.
Not
The design.
monsters.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, Monsters nailed the design, nailed the progression. It introduced new towers slowly, so
mhm.
and it might not be level to level to level. It might be 3 or 4 levels in between. It introduced ice levels. It introduced multi paths, so you would think you would have it set, and all of a sudden a new path would appear from the bottom. Amazing, amazing game. And
I
like I said, go ahead, John.
I bought that game 3 times. I bought it on the PlayStation 3. I bought it on the PSP, and I bought it on PC so I could play it on Linux.
That's
I
so
didn't even
weird.
know
If
it
you had like a
Insane.
subscription, you wouldn't have had to buy that at all.
See, Steven,
A
you're making a
subscription
lot of good
service, you would have
points.
just had it on all three.
Well, if I bought it on the PlayStation subscription, then I wouldn't be able to play it on PC, so still have to buy it.
You know, you would
But
at
you
least
would if it's
you would have
Xbox.
saved at least $20.
I was so close to just saying the Pixel Junk series, but I made you stick to Heroes of Might and Magic last week, so I was like, I gotta pick one.
Yeah, I was
Did
like,
you pick? Did you pick number three?
He did.
yeah,
I knew it.
He did.
without a doubt, you guys know. And
Well,
not the HD3, the OG.
yeah, he said that last week too. That's awesome. Well, with that being said, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me. This has been a fantastic conversation. Stephen,
Thank
I
you for having
appreciate
me.
you coming off the bench, and I hope you join us in content moving forward. John always tends to give us a little piece of advice at the end of each and every episode. So, John, what's your advice for this week?
We didn't get to talk about hardware. Always check out the hardware.
Always check out the hardware. Well, thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
us.
you
We will
got to know
talk to
what's
you
under the
next week.
hood.
That's true. Have a good week.